Hello and welcome to The Top Story, a podcast with the headlines of the day from our correspondents around the world. I'm Qi Zhi. Coming up in this edition, the United States suspends new student visa interviews as it readies tougher guidelines to vet foreign applicants' social media accounts. German leaders and families of Israeli hostages criticize Tel Aviv over its deadly airstrikes and blockade on Gaza. And China and 11 Pacific Island nations seek to bolster ties during their two-day meeting in eastern China. We begin in North America. U.S. President Donald Trump's administration has directed federal agencies to review and potentially terminate the government's remaining contracts with Harvard University. An official valued the deals at around $100 million. The administration also ordered missions abroad to stop scheduling new visa appointments for students and exchange visitors. The moves came as the State Department prepares to expand social media vetting of foreign students. Nathan King reports.
The Trump administration accusing one of the top universities of essentially having anti-Semitism on its campus, also practicing diversity, equity, and inclusion practices, defying a Supreme Court order on race-based selection. Harvard denies all this, saying essentially it is a private institution and has First Amendment rights and is being bullied. I've counted 11 different legal actions against Harvard. There's a whole list of other smaller financial ones as well. The research grants are frozen, especially in healthcare. And many people think the Trump administration is shooting themselves in the foot as the hunt for global talent across the world will lure students who could have gone to Harvard and other institutions elsewhere, to Europe, to China. We'll wait and see, but I can tell you, nearly every day, the pressure on Harvard from this administration increases. Pressure on an elite institution that used to be the pride of the U.S. educational establishment.
That was Nathan King outside the White House. The Trump administration is considering imposing 100% tariffs on all films made outside the United States and shown domestically. Filmmakers around the world say this could hurt an industry already dealing with big changes in technology and how people watch movies. Frank Contreras reports from Mexico City.
The global film industry was already in flux even before U.S. President Donald Trump threatened to slap 100% tariffs on films made partly or entirely in Mexico. Scores of U.S. film productions come to Mexico each year, where production costs are far lower than in Hollywood. For decades, Mexican filmmakers have collaborated with their colleagues in California. Threats to impose massive tariffs by U.S. President Donald Trump are being felt across the world, and especially here in Mexico, a country with a long history of film collaborations with Hollywood. The possibility of high tariffs on films created in Mexico is already producing uncertainty here. Film producer Santiago de la Paz says tariff threats will hurt both the U.S. and Mexican film industries and their many collaborations.
I think the better way to do this is to create financial incentives, including tax breaks, so that film productions can take place across Mexico. The Trump approach is based on fear, and it will make productions outside the United States more expensive.
Mexico produces an average of 240 films each year, but most never make it to distribution. The vast majority of films shown in theaters across Mexico come from the United States. The president of the Mexican Academy of Cinematic Arts and Sciences, Armando Casas, says Mexico is the fourth largest film viewing public in the world, behind the United States, India, and China. And that gives Mexico room to negotiate.
Even if there is a mechanism to charge tariffs on foreign films shown in the United States, the truth is that it wouldn't be relevant because very few foreign films are shown in that country. The interesting thing would be if Mexico responded reciprocally with tariffs.
For now, Trump's threats to hit foreign films with high tariffs are still just that, a threat. And Mexican filmmakers are waiting to see how this cliffhanger plays out.
That was Frank Contreras reporting from Mexico City. Moving to Europe, Russian President Vladimir Putin has met Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan to discuss efforts to end the Ukraine conflict and developments since direct talks between Moscow and Kyiv. Fidan also spoke with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov during the visit. Dasha Chineshova has more on the talks in Moscow.
Those were quite extensive discussions. We understand from the press conference that was held in the Russian capital that they have been talking about bilateral issues, about the possibility of increase in trade, as well as the obstacles that still exist in the bilateral projects, including the construction of the Akuyu nuclear power plants, how to remove those obstacles and how to find new areas of cooperation. But indeed, they were talking a lot about the international agenda, the situation in Syria, with both countries calling for the territorial integrity of Syria, the situation in the Middle East with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov saying that their positions overlap in terms of the necessity to end the bloodshed and to establish the state of Palestine, and the situation in Ukraine is something for which Moscow is thankful to Turkey, suggesting that Turkey has played a significant role in providing the location, the venue for the negotiations, as well as placing a lot of effort in terms of mediation. We understand from the Russian side that Moscow will be willing to hold the second round of negotiations again in Istanbul, suggesting it is a convenient venue for both sides, and also stressing that there have been many attempts by the Western countries to derail those negotiations that have already been taking place, and the need to eliminate the root causes of these conflicts. Hakan Fidan, the Turkish foreign minister, also taken the note that there is an urgent need to establish the ceasefire that could potentially, in his words, then lead to the permanent peace. And obviously we understand that all of the efforts are now being put forward to continue those talks that have started between Moscow and Kiev.
That was Dasha Chineshova in Moscow. On the Middle East, German Foreign Minister Johann Wadephil has called on his party members to halt arms exports to Israel. He stressed that Germany should not succumb to political pressure. This comes after German Chancellor Friedrich Merz delivered his most severe rebuke of Israel, saying its operations in Gaza are no longer justifiable. Complaints also continued at home as families of the hostages protested in Tel Aviv and demanded their release. They urged the government to stop the attacks and strike a deal to return the remaining captives. Jonathan Regev reports from Tel Aviv.
Of misinformation and perhaps psychological terrorism on behalf of Hamas on the Israeli hostage families. That is something that unfortunately Israelis can perhaps understand. What they cannot understand is the fact that the Israeli prime minister is saying things, giving the families hope, only then to say things that contradict the same things that he said only minutes earlier. There were reports coming out of the United States, out of Gaza, that things may be going into some kind of a hostage agreement. And then Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu published a statement on his behalf. Here is what he said.
We will defeat those who seek our lives. We will bring back all our hostages. We will ensure that Gaza no longer poses a threat to Israel. This mission, including the return of our hostages, is with us day by day. It occupies us night by night. We are not letting go of it. If we don't achieve it today, we will achieve it tomorrow. And if not tomorrow, then the day after. We are not letting go.
So the families understood that on Monday night or Tuesday evening or by Wednesday there will be some kind of development. But then the Prime Minister's office said, no, he did not mean Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, just a form of expression saying that Israel will not let up on this issue. Maybe a form of expression, but when you toy around with the emotions and feelings of families who have their loved ones in captivity in Gaza for 599 days, That created a lot of criticism in Israel. The families are very critical of the prime minister as it is. Once this statement came and then some kind of a reaction revoking that from the prime minister's office, it created major criticism on the prime minister.
That was Jonathan Regev with the reactions of angry Israeli families. Finally, in China, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has stressed equality when communicating with leaders and officials from Pacific Island countries. He held bilateral talks with some of them as they were in Xiamen for a ministerial meeting. The gathering in the eastern Chinese city is the first in-person meeting in China. Liu Jiaxing has more.
Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi had met with his counterparts from Kiribati, Niue, Tonga, the Solomon Islands, as well as the Cook Islands. During the bilateral meetings, the parties had an exchange of views, in-depth exchange of views on all-round cooperation and exchanges between China and Pacific Island countries, as well as international issues of common concern. What impressed me a lot is that during an opening remarks during the bilateral meeting with Premier and Foreign Minister Dalton Tagalagi of Niue, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi said that China has always advocated that all countries, no matter big or small, is equal. He also said that Niue is not alone and China can be a trustworthy friend and long-term partner, even though Niue's Premier earlier has said about this island is a lonely island on the Pacific Ocean. But Wang Yi insists that China and Niue had this relationship, and China attaches great importance to the Pacific Island countries. The two countries, by the way, have established a comprehensive strategic partnership since 2018, and also since establishing the diplomatic ties with these Pacific Island countries in the 1970s. China and Pacific Island nations have already exchanged cooperation in more than 20 areas, including trade, investment, ocean affairs, environmental protection, disaster mitigation and prevention, as well as poverty alleviation. So far, China has already implemented more than 100 aid projects and over 200 batches of all kinds of assistance, as well as trained more than 10,000 talents in various fields for these Pacific Island nations.
That was Liu Jiaxing reviewing China's ties with Pacific Island countries. Now recapping the headlines before we go, the United States has suspended new student visa interviews as it readies tougher guidelines to vet foreign applicants' social media accounts. German leaders and families of Israeli hostages have criticized Tel Aviv over its deadly airstrikes and blockade on Gaza. And China and 11 Pacific Island nations are seeking to bolster ties during their two-day meeting in eastern China. And that's it for this edition of The Top Story, a podcast that brings you world headlines every weekday. For more news in politics, business, sports and culture, you can subscribe to the Beijing Hour, a one-hour podcast news magazine program. We would welcome and appreciate all ratings and reviews. I'm Qi Zhi. Thank you for listening.